The alarm bells rang through every corridor of the colony ship Perseverance. Red lights flashed in desperate patterns as 40,000 souls realized they were about to die in the cold darkness of space. Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the command chair so hard her knuckles turned white. The main engine was dead. The backup systems had failed 30 minutes ago. Now the life support was failing too. She could already feel the air getting thinner, colder. In 6 hours, maybe less, everyone on this ship would suffocate. Send the distress signal again, she ordered, though she knew it was pointless. They were in the outer reaches, a dead zone between the spiral arms of the galaxy. No one came out here. That was why they had chosen this route. It was faster, cutting weeks off their journey to the new colony world. Now that decision was going to kill them all. Her communication officer, a young man named Peters, looked up with tears in his eyes. "Captain, we're too far out. Even if someone hears us, they can't reach us in time." Rodriguez looked at the screen showing the ship's interior. Families huddled together in their quarters. Parents held their children. Some people prayed. Others just waited. She had failed them all. The bridge door opened and Ambassador Sarah Chen walked in. She was supposed to be establishing Earth's first major colony, representing humanity to the galaxy. Instead, she was going to die with everyone else. But her face showed no fear. She stood beside the captain and watched the screens in silence. "I'm sorry," Rodriguez whispered. "I thought this route was safe." Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. "You made the best choice with the information you had. No one blames you." Peters suddenly jumped from his chair. "Captain, I'm getting a response to our distress call." Everyone on the bridge turned to stare at him. Rodriguez felt her heart hammer in her chest. From who? How far away? They identify themselves as Kelrath traders and... Peters checked his instruments again, not believing what he was seeing. "They're only 4 hours away. They heard our first signal and have been burning toward us at maximum speed." 4 hours, Rodriguez breathed. "We have 6 hours of air left. It's going to be close, but they might make it. Tell them we have 40,000 people aboard." "Tell them..." "Captain, they already know," Peters interrupted. "They've scanned our ship." "And they're saying..." "They're saying they can take everyone." Chen stepped forward. "How? 40,000 people need life support, space, resources. How can a trader ship handle that?" The answer came back quickly. The Kelrath captain, who called himself Thekna, explained in broken but understandable English. They would dump their entire cargo hold into space. Every piece of merchandise they were carrying, every valuable thing they owned. They would convert the cargo areas into emergency shelters. It would be crowded and uncomfortable, but everyone would survive. "But your cargo," Chen said into the communication channel. "That must be worth a fortune." "Your entire business." There was a pause, then Thekna's clicking, insect-like voice came through the translator. "Life is worth more than profit. We will not let you die when we can prevent it. This is the Kelrath way." Rodriguez watched through the view screen as the Kelrath merchant fleet approached. There were 5 ships, their hulls painted in bright colors with swirling patterns. They looked nothing like the sleek human vessels. These were working ships, worn and practical, and they were dumping everything they owned into the void of space. Crates tumbled into the darkness. Containers of rare minerals, technological components, exotic foods, artwork. Millions of credits worth of goods just thrown away. The Kelrath crews worked frantically, clearing every available space to make room for the humans they had never met. The rescue took 3 hours. The Kelrath docked their ships to the Perseverance and opened their airlocks. Human families streamed through, carrying what few possessions they could grab. The Kelrath crew members guided them gently, their mandibles clicking in what might have been reassuring sounds. They were tall, their bodies covered in chitinous plates that shimmered green and blue under the lights. Their large compound eyes reflected the frightened faces of human children, but their movements were careful, kind. Chen was one of the last to leave the Perseverance. She stood with Captain Thekna in the cargo hold of his flagship, now crammed with humanity. The space smelled strange to her, alien, but it was warm and the air was good. Around her, families were reunited. People were crying with relief. Children were actually laughing. "Captain Thekna," she said formally, "on behalf of humanity and the United Earth government, I thank you. You have saved 40,000 lives today. We owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Thekna waved his upper appendages in a gesture the translator interpreted as dismissal. "We seek no debt. We seek no payment. What we did is simply what must be done. When someone is drowning, you pull them from the water. You do not ask for payment afterward. Perhaps that is your way, Chen said quietly. But it is not ours. Let me be very clear about something, Captain. Humanity never forgets a kindness shown to us in our darkest hour. What you did today will be remembered. I promise you that. The Kelrath captain tilted his head in what might have been confusion. His translator was having trouble with the nuances of her tone. We ask nothing. We want nothing. We are simply glad we heard your call. Chen smiled, but there was something fierce in her expression. You don't understand, Captain. We never forget. And someday, when you or your people need us, we will be there. I don't care if it takes 10 years or 1,000. Humanity will remember. The Kelrath carried the survivors to the nearest human outpost, a journey of 2 weeks in cramped conditions. They refused any payment, though Earth offered millions. They refused honors and medals. Captain Thekna simply said that seeing the humans safe was reward enough. Then the merchant fleet turned around and headed back into space to rebuild their business from nothing. On Earth, the story of the Perseverance spread quickly. The 40,000 survivors told everyone about the Kelrath who had sacrificed everything to save them. Ambassador Chen went before the Earth Assembly and had them pass a formal resolution. It was called Protocol Perseverance, and it was simple. If the Kelrath ever called for help, Earth would answer. No debate, no discussion, no hesitation. Years passed. The survivors of the Perseverance lived their lives. They had children and grandchildren. They built the colony they had dreamed of, naming it New Hope. They never forgot the Kelrath, though they never saw them again. Humanity grew and spread across the stars. They became traders, explorers, warriors, diplomats. Earth colonies numbered in the hundreds. The human fleet became one of the strongest in the galaxy. They made friends and enemies, joined the Galactic Council, and carved out their place among the stars. And always, in every human school, children learned about the Perseverance. They learned about the Kelrath who asked for nothing and gave everything. They learned that humanity pays its debts. 150 years later, in a small museum on Earth, there was a memorial. It showed a Kelrath ship alongside the Perseverance. Below it, written in 30 languages, were the words Sarah Chen had spoken that day. Humanity never forgets. Most people walked past it without stopping. It was ancient history now. The Kelrath had faded from the news, from politics, from relevance. The galaxy had moved on, but the memorial remained. And the promise remained, waiting for the day it would be needed. High Chancellor Thekna sat in his chamber on Kelrath Prime, staring at the holographic display floating before him. He was old now, his chitin dull and cracked with age. He had lived for nearly 2 centuries, which was ancient even for his kind. He remembered things most Kelrath had forgotten. He remembered when their people had been prosperous. He remembered the days when Kelrath merchant fleets filled the trade routes. Most importantly, he remembered the humans. The display showed the current state of the Kelrath sovereignty. 3 star systems, 8 inhabited worlds, 200 million souls down from billions in his youth. Their military consisted of 40 outdated ships that could barely maintain orbit, let alone fight. Their economy was failing. Their young ones were emigrating to other species' worlds, seeking better lives. And now, the Vryn were coming. His aide, a young female named Shetra, entered the chamber. She moved with the quick nervousness of someone bearing bad news. High Chancellor, the Vryn ambassador has sent their final message. Play it, Thekna said quietly. The display shifted to show a Vryn commander. The Vryn were reptilian, covered in scales that gleamed like metal. Their eyes were cold, calculating. The commander spoke with the bored tone of someone stating an obvious fact. The Vryn hegemony hereby claims all Kelrath systems as sovereign territory. You have 72 hours to evacuate your military vessels from Kelrath Prime's orbital space. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. This is not a negotiation. The message ended. Shetra's antennae drooped with despair. What do we do, High Chancellor? Our ships cannot fight theirs. The Galactic Council says they will issue a formal protest, but nothing more. No one will help us. Thekna was quiet for a long time. He thought about his people, about the children playing in the gardens below his tower, about the families who had lived on these worlds for thousands of years. Then he thought about a cold day in space 150 years ago, when he had dumped his cargo hold to save strangers. Send a message, he said finally. Send it to all the worlds where we once traded. Send it to the species who remember us. Tell them. Tell them goodbye. Tell them the Kelrath thanked them for the years of peace and trade. Tell them our story ends, but we end it with dignity. High Chancellor. Shetra was confused. A goodbye message? Yes, Thecna said. We cannot fight. We cannot flee. We cannot hide. But we can choose how we are remembered. Send the message everywhere. Make sure it reaches Earth especially. Earth? Shetra had heard of them, of course. The humans, but they were far away, powerful, busy with their own affairs. Why Earth particularly? Thecna's mandibles clicked in what might have been a sad smile. Because I once met a human who made me a promise. I told her we wanted nothing, expected nothing. But she said humans never forget. I did not believe her then. Perhaps I was right not to, but send the message anyway. The message went out across the galaxy. It was simple and dignified. The Kelrath did not beg. They did not demand help. They simply stated facts. The Vryn were coming. The Kelrath could not stop them. This was the end of their sovereignty, possibly their species. They thanked those who had been their friends. They wished the galaxy well. On hundreds of worlds, the message was received and filed away. Most governments issued polite statements of regret. Some sent sympathy. None offered help. The Vryn were too powerful, too dangerous. No one wanted to risk war over 3 insignificant star systems. But on Earth, something different happened. Ambassador James Chen was in the middle of a routine assembly session when the message came through. He was the great-grandson of Sarah Chen, and he wore her old diplomatic pin on his jacket. It was a family tradition. He barely paid attention as the communication officer announced an incoming message from the Kelrath sovereignty. Then the message played, and the entire assembly hall went silent. James Chen watched the old Kelrath chancellor speak. He saw the dignity in that alien face, the acceptance of death, and then he heard the words that changed everything. We especially thank the humans who we once aided. We hope they have lived good lives. We hope the children of the Perseverance knew happiness. The chamber stayed silent for 10 full seconds after the message ended. Then James Chen stood up. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady and loud. Motion to invoke Protocol Perseverance. Every human in the assembly knew what that meant. It was the emergency protocol established 150 years ago. It had never been used. Some had argued it should be removed from the books as outdated, but it remained waiting. The vote was called immediately. There was no debate. There was no discussion. Every single representative voted yes. The motion passed unanimously in less than 2 minutes. The Speaker of the Assembly struck the ceremonial bell 3 times. Its deep sound echoed through the hall. Then she spoke the formal words that activated the protocol. Let it be known that humanity has voted to honor its debt. The full resources of Earth and all her colonies are hereby committed to the defense of the Kelrath sovereignty. This is not negotiable. This is not reversible. This is our word, and our word is our bond. James Chen immediately opened a channel to Fleet Command. This is Ambassador Chen. Protocol Perseverance is active. I need the 3rd and 7th Fleets mobilized within 48 hours. The Admiral on the other end was silent for a moment. Ambassador, that's 400 warships. That's nearly half our active fleet. Do you understand what you're asking? I understand perfectly, James said. The Kelrath saved 40,000 human lives when they had no reason to do so. They gave up everything they owned. We made a promise that day, Admiral. Now we keep it. The Vryn will not back down from this, the Admiral warned. We could be starting a war. Then we start a war, James replied calmly. Send the ships. Within hours, the news spread across human space. At first, many people did not understand. Why was Earth risking war for an alien species most had never heard of? The Kelrath were insignificant. This made no strategic sense. Then the story came out. Historians pulled the old records from the Perseverance incident. They interviewed the descendants of the survivors. They showed footage of the Kelrath dumping their cargo, sacrificing their livelihoods to save strangers. A woman named Maria Rodriguez spoke on the Planetary News Network. She was 90 years old, her face lined with age. My grandmother was Captain Rodriguez of the Perseverance, she said, tears streaming down her face. She told me the story every year on the anniversary. She told me how the Kelrath came when no one else would, how they asked for nothing, how they saved my family. She looked directly into the camera. We owe them everything, everything. And now we pay that debt. The mood on Earth shifted. This was not about strategy or politics. This was about something deeper. This was about the kind of species humanity wanted to be. Did they keep their promises? Did they remember kindness? Did they stand by those who had stood by them? In shipyards across human space, workers volunteered for extra shifts. Ships that were scheduled for maintenance were pushed back into service. Pilots who had retired came back to duty. The message was clear. Humanity was going to war, and they were going all in. The Vrin received Earth's official message 72 hours after the protocol was invoked. It was delivered by Ambassador Chen himself, broadcast on all frequencies so everyone in the galaxy could hear. This is Ambassador James Chen of the United Earth Government. The Vrin hegemony is hereby ordered to withdraw all military forces from Kelrath space immediately. Any hostile action against the Kelrath will be considered an act of war against humanity. You have 48 hours to comply. This is not a negotiation. The Vrin commander who received the message actually laughed. He sent back a reply dripping with contempt. Humanity threatens war over 3 worthless systems? You overextend yourself for sentiment. We do not fear your emotional theatrics. The Kelrath are ours. Stay out of this. Admiral Kwame Okafor read the Vrin response on the bridge of his flagship, the dreadnought Indomitable. He was a tall man with white hair and scars from a dozen battles. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens. He had never lost an engagement. He composed a single-line response and sent it back to the Vrin commander. You should. Then he gave the order, and 400 human warships jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading for Kelrath space. Behind them, 1,000 more ships began preparations to follow if needed. On Kelrath Prime, High Chancellor Thekna received word of what was happening. At first, he did not believe it. Then the reports kept coming. Human fleets were mobilizing. Earth had declared the Kelrath under their protection. They were coming. The old chancellor sat down heavily, his legs suddenly weak. Shetra stood beside him, reading the reports with disbelief. They remembered, Thekna whispered. After 150 years across half the galaxy, through all the changes in time, they remembered. What do we do now? Shetra asked. Thekna looked up at her, and for the first time in months there was hope in his ancient eyes. Now we survive, because the humans are coming, and when humans make a promise, they keep it. The war room on Earth was packed with military commanders, diplomats, and corporate executives. It had been 36 hours since Protocol Perseverance was invoked, and the mobilization was moving faster than anyone thought possible. Admiral Okafor stood at the center of the room, holographic displays floating around him showing ship positions, supply lines, and tactical data. Status report, he ordered. Commander Lisa Park stepped forward. Third Fleet is already in position at the staging area. 212 ships fully armed and supplied. 7th Fleet will join them in 6 hours. That gives us 417 warships total. We also have offers of support from independent captains and colony defense forces. Another 100 ships if we want them. We want them, Okafor said immediately. Every ship counts. What about supplies? That is where things get interesting, sir, Park said. She pulled up a new display. Normally, moving this many ships this fast would strain our logistics network to the breaking point. But we are getting help from unexpected sources. The display showed data streaming in from across human space. Okafor read it with growing amazement. These numbers cannot be right. They are, sir, Park confirmed. Every major human corporation has suspended normal operations to support the deployment. Chenokoro Industries has diverted its entire shipping fleet to move military supplies. Stellar Dynamics is manufacturing ammunition around the clock and delivering it at cost. Morrison Foods is providing rations for free. And those are just the big ones. Small businesses are contributing too. A restaurant chain on Mars is sending care packages to every ship. A toy company on Europa is sending stress relief items for the crew. Ambassador Chen entered the room and several people stood in respect. He waved them back to their seats. I have just come from addressing the Galactic Council, he said. They are not happy with us. 16 different species have filed formal protests. They say we are being reckless, that we are going to start an unnecessary war, that the Kelrath are not worth this level of commitment. And what did you tell them? Okafor asked. Chen smiled grimly. I told them that humanity remembers its friends. I told them that any species which does not understand that concept is not one we wish to associate with, and I told them that if they stand in our way, they will regret it. One of the diplomats, a nervous man named Harrison, spoke up. "Ambassador, some of the council members are suggesting that we are only doing this to expand human influence. They say we are using the Kelrath as an excuse for territorial acquisition." "Let them say what they want," Chen replied. "We know the truth. Every human knows the truth. The Perseverance incident is taught in every school. This is not about politics or territory. This is about honor." A communication officer interrupted. "Sirs, we are getting incoming messages from other species. A lot of them. More protests?" Chen asked tiredly. "No, sir," the officer said, looking confused. "These are offers of support." The room went quiet. Okafor walked over to the communication station. "Show me." The screen filled with messages. The first was from the Turian clans, a warrior species known for their fierce independence. The Turian clans recognize the honor in humanity's actions. "We pledge 12 warships to assist in the defense of the Kelrath. We ask no payment except the right to fight beside you." Another message came from the Osirian free traders, merchants who traveled the space lanes. "Humanity once helped us negotiate fair trade agreements when larger species tried to exploit us. We have not forgotten. We offer our cargo ships to move your supplies and our small defense fleet to scout for you." More messages came in. The Zephyr Collective sent medical ships. The Granite clans offered engineers. Individual captains from a dozen species volunteered their vessels. It was not an invasion force, but it was significant. More importantly, it showed that humanity was not alone in believing that some debts were sacred. "How many total?" Okafor asked. The communication officer did quick calculations. "If we accept all offers, we will have another 80 ships from other species. Not all are military vessels, but they can support the effort." Chen nodded slowly. "Accept them all. Let the galaxy see that this is not just humanity's fight. This is about principle. Any species that values honor and loyalty is welcome to stand with us." 2 days later, the combined fleet gathered at the edge of Kelrath space. It was the largest military force assembled in decades. 400 human warships formed the core, their hulls painted in the blue and white of the Earth Defense Force. Around them floated vessels of a dozen different designs, representing species who had answered the call. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Okafor looked at the tactical display. The Vryn fleet was already in position around Kelrath Prime, 300 ships well-armed and confident. They had not moved despite the ultimatum. They were calling humanity's bluff. "Open a channel to all ships," Okafor ordered. "All frequencies, including civilian. I want everyone to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, sir." Okafor took a breath, then spoke. "This is Admiral Kwame Okafor of the Earth Defense Force. 150 years ago, a human colony ship was dying in the darkness. No one was supposed to be nearby. No one was supposed to hear their distress call. But someone did. The Kelrath heard, and they came. They gave up everything they owned to save people they had never met. They asked for nothing in return." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Today, the Kelrath are the ones in danger. Today, they are the ones facing darkness. And today we answer their call, just as they answered ours. Let it be known across all the stars that humanity pays its debts. Let it be known that we will move entire fleets, commit our resources, and yes, fight a war if necessary to protect those who showed us mercy in our darkest hour." He looked at the tactical display showing the Vryn fleet. "The Vryn hegemony has 48 hours to withdraw from Kelrath space. If they do not, we will remove them by force. This is not a threat. This is a promise. And humanity always keeps its promises." The message ended. For a moment there was silence across the fleet. Then from one of the Turian ships a war horn sounded. It was a deep resonating blast that spoke of ancient battles and warrior honor. The other Turian ships joined in, creating a symphony of challenge. The Osirian ships flashed their running lights in patterns that meant determination in their culture. The Zephyr medical vessels broadcast a harmonic tone that represented hope and healing. Every alien ship added their own gesture of solidarity. And the human ships? They simply waited, their weapons powered up, their crews ready. They did not need grand gestures. They had made their statement. On Kelrath Prime, the message was broadcast on every screen, every speaker, every communication device. Kelrath citizens stopped what they were doing and listened. In homes and offices, in streets and parks, they heard the human admiral's words. High Chancellor Thekna listened from his chamber, Shetra standing beside him. When the message ended, he found he could not speak. His mandibles trembled, and his eyes, those ancient compound eyes that had seen so much, reflected the light like jewels. "They came," he finally managed to say. "I hoped, but I did not truly believe. And they came." Shatra was crying, fluid leaking from her eyes in the Kelrath way of showing overwhelming emotion. "What did we do to deserve this?" "We only did what was right. We did not ask for repayment. That is exactly why they came," Thecna said quietly. "Because we asked for nothing. Because we gave everything when it mattered. They understand something that the rest of the galaxy seems to have forgotten. True kindness given freely in dark times creates bonds that cannot be broken." The Vryn response came 6 hours later. Their commander appeared on all channels, his scaled face showing contempt. "Humanity overestimates its power. You have 400 ships. We have 300 here, and thousands more throughout our empire. You cannot win this fight. We will not withdraw. If you attack, you will start a war that will cost millions of lives. All of this for 3 insignificant worlds and a dying species? Your sentiment makes you weak." The message played across the fleet. Some commanders looked worried. The Vryn were right about the numbers. If this escalated to full war, the casualties would be enormous. Perhaps they had overcommitted. Perhaps this was a mistake, but Admiral Okafor just smiled. He composed a simple reply, just 3 words, and sent it directly to the Vryn commander. "Test us then." On Earth, the public reaction to the Vryn response was not fear. It was anger. Protests erupted, but not against the military action. People were protesting that the government was not doing enough. Recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. The mood was clear. Humanity was ready to fight. A video went viral across human space. It showed Maria Rodriguez, the elderly woman who was descended from the Perseverance's captain. She stood in front of the memorial that honored the Kelrath rescue. She spoke directly to the camera, her voice shaking but firm. "My grandmother spent the rest of her life telling people about the Kelrath. She told everyone who would listen that they were the finest beings she ever met. Not because they were powerful, not because they were rich, but because when faced with a choice between profit and life, they chose life without hesitation. She made me promise to remember. And I have. We all have." The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kelrath Prime system. 400 human warships appeared in perfect formation, their weapons systems already hot, their shields at full power. Around them, the ships of their allies took up supporting positions. The Turian warships moved to the flanks, ready to harry and strike. The Osirian scouts spread out, their sensors probing for weaknesses in the Vryn formation. Admiral Okafor stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display. The Vryn fleet was exactly where intelligence said it would be, in orbit around Kelrath Prime. 300 warships arranged in a standard defensive formation. They had not moved. They had not retreated. They were waiting. "They are confident," Commander Park observed from her station. "They think we will back down." "Then they do not know humans very well," Okafor replied. He opened a channel to the Vryn flagship. "This is Admiral Okafor. You were given 48 hours to withdraw. That time has expired. Leave now or we will make you leave." The Vryn commander appeared on screen. His name was Kasix, and he had conquered 12 star systems for the hegemony. His scales were dark red, almost black, and his eyes showed no emotion. "Admiral, this is foolish. You are outnumbered when you consider our reinforcements. You are far from home. Your supply lines are vulnerable. Retreat now and we will overlook this insult. Stay, and many will die for nothing." "The Kelrath are not nothing," Okafor said coldly. "Final warning, Commander Kasix. Withdraw your forces." Kasix's tongue flicked out in what might have been a laugh. "No, this system belongs to the Vryn now. If you want it, come and take it." The channel closed. Okafor took a deep breath and looked around his bridge. Every officer was at their station, ready. They knew what was about to happen. Some of them might die in the next few hours, but none of them looked afraid. They looked determined. "All ships," Okafor said into the fleet-wide channel. "We did not come here to threaten. We did not come here to posture. We came here to fulfill a promise made 150 years ago. Today we show the galaxy what human honor looks like. Attack pattern Delta 7. Engage at will." The human fleet surged forward. The Vryn were expecting a traditional battle. Ship-to-ship combat, formation against formation, a test of firepower and shields. That was how every species fought. That was how wars were won and lost in the galaxy. But humans had learned warfare in a different school. They had spent thousands of years fighting each other on Earth, developing tactics and strategies that other species had never imagined. They had refined these methods in the colonies against pirates and rebels and hostile environments. And now they brought all of that knowledge to bear. The first wave was not ships, it was drones. Thousands of them, small and fast, launched from the human vessels. They swarmed toward the Vryn fleet like angry insects. Too many to track, too small to waste heavy weapons on. The Vryn point defense systems opened fire, destroying hundreds of drones. But there were thousands more, and they kept coming. Some drones were bombs crashing into Vryn shields and detonating. The explosions did little damage individually, but they came in waves, never stopping, draining the shields bit by bit. Other drones were jammers, broadcasting noise across every frequency, disrupting Vryn communications and targeting systems. Still others were just recorders, cameras and sensors that mapped every detail of the Vryn fleet, finding weaknesses, identifying command ships. Their formation is breaking apart, Park reported. The drones are forcing them to spread their point defense fire. They cannot maintain tight coordination. Good, Okafor said. Second wave launch. The second wave was missiles. Not the massive ship killers that most species used. Those were too slow, too easy to intercept. Human missiles were fast and smart, using the drone data to find gaps in the Vryn defense. They came from unexpected angles, using the wreckage of destroyed drones as cover. When the Vryn shields were weakest, that was when the missiles struck. A Vryn cruiser took 3 missiles to its port side. Its shields flared and failed. The ship spun out of formation, trailing atmosphere from a dozen breaches. It was not destroyed, but it was out of the fight. They are adapting, Park warned, adjusting their point defense patterns. Then we adapt faster, Okafor replied. All ships weapons free. Engage your designated targets. Now the human warships themselves entered the battle. But they did not come in straight lines, did not advance in parade formation. They came in clusters supporting each other, covering each other's weaknesses. When a Vryn ship focused on one human vessel, 2 others would hit it from different angles. When the Vryn tried to return fire, the human ships scattered, making themselves difficult targets, then reformed to strike again. The Turian ships swept around the flanks, their plasma cannons tearing into Vryn engines and weapon systems. They did not try to destroy, just to disable. A ship without engines could not fight. A ship without weapons was no threat. The battle was chaotic, nothing like the organized fleet actions the Vryn were used to. There was no battle line, no clear front. It was 3-dimensional chaos, with ships moving in all directions, attacking from every angle. And through it all, the human drones kept coming, never stopping, always adapting. On Kelrath Prime, millions watched the battle on screens across the planet. They saw their old, outdated defense fleet trying to help, but mostly staying back as the Admiral had ordered. They saw the human ships moving like schools of fish, coordinated but fluid. They saw Vryn vessels taking damage, falling back, trying desperately to regroup. High Chancellor Thekna watched from his chamber, Shetra translating the tactical displays for him. He was old and his eyes were not what they once were, but even he could see that something unprecedented was happening. The humans fight like no one else, Shetra breathed. Look how they move. Like water flowing around rocks. Like wind through trees. I have never seen anything like it. Because most species fight to prove strength. Thekna said quietly. Humans fight to win. There is a difference. On the Indomitable's bridge, alarms suddenly blared. Admiral, multiple FTL signatures incoming. Park shouted. Vryn reinforcements. Okafor watched as 70 more Vryn warships dropped out of FTL behind their position. The tactical display turned red with warnings. They were now outnumbered. If the fresh Vryn forces joined the battle, the odds would shift dramatically. But Okafor was smiling. Right on time, he said. He opened a channel. Captain Williams, you are clear to engage. From behind the newly arrived Vryn ships, another group appeared on sensors. 50 human vessels that had been hiding in the system's asteroid field, waiting in silent running mode, undetectable until they powered up their weapons. They were older ships, reserve fleet vessels crewed by veterans who had come out of retirement for this fight. The new Vryn forces found themselves trapped between 2 human groups. Before they could organize a response, the humans struck. Missiles and railgun fire hammered into the confused Vryn ships. Several took critical damage in the first 30 seconds. Admiral Casix is breaking formation, Park reported. His flagship is retreating toward the outer system. Let him run, Okafor said. Focus on the ships that remain.
Disable, do not destroy if possible.
I want them to carry a message back to the Vryn hegemony. The battle continued for 2 more hours. It was brutal and intense, but the outcome became clear quickly. The Vryn tactics simply could not cope with the human approach. Every time they tried to regroup, human ships would strike from a new direction. Every time they tried to focus fire, their targets would scatter. Their communications were jammed, their sensors confused by the constant drone harassment. One by one, Vryn ships were disabled or forced to retreat. Some fought to the end and were destroyed, but most broke and ran when it became clear they could not win. By the time the battle ended, over 200 Vryn ships were fleeing the system. 40 more floated dead in space, their crews already being rescued by the medical ships. Only 20 had been completely destroyed, and even then, the humans had tried to give them chances to surrender. The human fleet had lost 12 ships, with 23 more heavily damaged. The Turian forces had lost 5. The casualties were not light, but they were far less than anyone had expected. As the last Vryn vessel fled the system, Okafor opened a channel to Kelrath Prime. High Chancellor Thekna, this is Admiral Okafor. The Vryn have been driven from your space. Your worlds are secure. On the planet below, Kelrath citizens poured into the streets. They did not cheer at first. They simply stood there looking up at the sky, watching the human ships on the view screens. It seemed impossible. They had been saved. After 150 years, the debt had been repaid. Then someone started the traditional Kelrath hum of gratitude. It was a deep, resonating sound that Kelrath made when words were not enough. Others joined in, and soon millions of Kelrath across the planet were humming together, a single voice of thanks that rose to the stars. In his chamber, Thekna hummed too, his old voice cracking with emotion. Shetra stood beside him, adding her voice to the chorus. They came, Thekna said again, as if he still could not quite believe it. Across all that distance, through all that time, they came. 3 weeks after the battle, Ambassador James Chen stood in the Galactic Council chamber. The circular room was filled with representatives from hundreds of species, their voices creating a cacophony of sound as they argued and debated. The topic, as it had been for weeks, was humanity's actions in Kelrath space. The Vryn ambassador, a different one since Casix had been recalled in disgrace, stood at one of the speaking platforms. His voice was angry, humiliated. Humanity attacked Vryn forces without provocation. They violated our territorial claims. They must be censured, sanctioned, and forced to pay reparations. Other voices joined in. Some species were concerned about humanity's display of military power. Others worried about the precedent this set. If any species could declare protection over any other, where would it end? The galaxy needed order, structure, rules. Chen waited patiently for his turn to speak. When the moderator finally called on him, he walked slowly to the central platform. The chamber quieted. Everyone wanted to hear what humanity would say. Honored delegates, Chen began, his voice calm and clear. I have heard your concerns. I understand your worries. But I want to be absolutely clear about something. Humanity does not apologize for what we did. We would do it again tomorrow if needed. And we will do it again for any species that earns our loyalty the way the Kelrath did. The chamber erupted in shouting. Chen waited for it to die down, then continued. The Vryn claim we attacked without provocation. But they are wrong. The Kelrath asked for nothing, but we heard their goodbye message. We heard them accepting death with dignity. That was all the provocation we needed. Because 150 years ago, the Kelrath saved 40,000 human lives at tremendous cost to themselves. They created a debt whether they wanted to or not. He looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. Today I'm here to propose something new. The Galactic Council has rules for trade, for borders, for 1,000 small things. But we have no rule about the most important thing of all, loyalty. We have no protection for species that help others in their darkest moments. Today that changes. Chen pulled up a holographic document for everyone to see. This is the Perseverance Doctrine. It is simple. Any species that provides life-saving aid to another species in a time of existential crisis, asking nothing in return, is granted protected status. Any attack on such a species is considered an attack on the species they once saved. This creates a web of mutual protection based on actual demonstrated kindness, not just political alliances. The Vryn ambassador hissed in anger. This is absurd. You cannot legislate morality. You cannot force the galaxy to care about ancient debts. You are right, Chen replied. We cannot force anyone to care, but we can make it very clear what happens when you attack someone who has demonstrated true compassion. The Vryn learned that lesson. We are happy to teach it again to anyone else who needs it. The debate raged for hours. Some species supported the doctrine. Others called it interference. But in the end, something unexpected happened. The smaller species, the ones who often felt vulnerable in galactic politics, voted overwhelmingly in favor. They saw the perseverance doctrine as protection. If they helped others, they would be helped in return. The doctrine passed with a slim majority. It was not perfect, and it would take years to fully implement, but it was a start. The galaxy now had a formal recognition that some debts were sacred. While the politicians debated, the real work was happening in Kelrath space. Human engineers arrived by the thousands. They came with plans and equipment, with knowledge and resources. But more importantly, they came with respect. Commander Lisa Park had taken a leave from the military to oversee the reconstruction effort. She stood on Kelrath Prime, watching as human and Kelrath workers collaborated on rebuilding the planet's defense grid. The old Kelrath systems were being replaced with modern Earth technology, but the Kelrath were not just receiving charity. They were learning. Every human engineer was paired with Kelrath students, teaching them how the systems worked, how to maintain them, how to improve them. The goal is not to make you dependent on us, Park explained to a group of young Kelrath engineers. The goal is to give you the tools to defend yourselves. We will not always be here, but the knowledge we share will be yours forever. One of the young Kelrath, a male named Kretnor, raised his claw hesitantly.
Why do you do this?
You have already saved us. You owe us nothing more. Why continue to help? Park smiled. Because that is what the Kelrath taught us 150 years ago. You did not just save those people on the Perseverance. You did not just give them air and food. You showed them that in the darkness of space, kindness still exists. You showed them that some beings will sacrifice everything for strangers. That lesson changed humanity. It made us better. Now we pass that lesson forward. The cultural exchange went both ways. Human children learned Kelrath history in schools. Kelrath art became popular on Earth. Mixed crews began serving on ships together. It was not always smooth. There were misunderstandings, cultural clashes, moments of friction. But both species worked through them, because both species understood that this relationship was built on something real. High Chancellor Thekna, now too old to handle daily governance, spent his final years as an ambassador of cultural exchange. He traveled to Earth, the first Kelrath leader to do so. When he arrived, he was greeted by a crowd of over 1 million humans. They lined the streets holding signs thanking the Kelrath, singing songs of gratitude. Many were descendants of the Perseverance survivors. Maria Rodriguez, now 95 years old and in a wheelchair, was brought to meet him. She looked up at the old Kelrath Chancellor, this being who had saved her family, and tears rolled down her weathered face. Thank you, she said simply. Thank you for my life. Thank you for my children and grandchildren. Thank you for proving that goodness exists in this universe. Thekna's mandibles trembled. He knelt down, bringing his face level with hers. In broken English, with his natural clicking accent, he replied, Thank you for remembering. Thank you for teaching the galaxy what loyalty means. You humans, you are something special. The old woman smiled. So are you. The years continued to pass. The Kelrath population, boosted by medical technology and economic stability, began to grow again. New colonies were founded. The Kelrath military, trained by human advisors and equipped with modern technology, became capable of defending their space. They would never be a major power, but they would never be helpless again. The Vryn never came back. The defeat in Kelrath space had been humiliating. But more than that, it had been educational. They learned that some species valued things other than power and territory. They learned that attacking those who had shown compassion was not just strategically foolish. It was morally indefensible. The Vryn Empire did not fall, but it became more cautious, more respectful of boundaries. Other species took note. The Perseverance doctrine began to shape galactic politics in subtle ways. Species began helping each other more openly, knowing that such actions created bonds of protection. The galaxy did not become a utopia, but it became a little bit better. 50 years after the battle, a monument was unveiled on Kelrath Prime. It was built in the central square of the capital city, where millions could see it. The monument showed two figures, a Kelrath standing beside a human, their appendages clasped together. The Kelrath figure looked remarkably like the old recordings of Captain Thekna. The human figure was Ambassador Sarah Chen, the woman who first made the promise. The inscription was written in both languages and dozens of others. It read, "They came when we fell, we came when they called. This is the way of true civilizations." At the unveiling ceremony, Ambassador Chen's great-great-granddaughter stood beside the current Kelrath High Chancellor. They were friends, these two, having grown up together in the new era of human-Kelrath cooperation. The human woman, named Sarah after her ancestor, spoke to the crowd. "My great-great-grandmother made a promise 150 years ago. She said humanity never forgets. Today, we have kept that promise. But this monument is not about the past. It is about the future. It is a reminder to every generation that will come after us. Kindness matters. Compassion matters. And when someone shows you mercy in your darkest hour, you remember. And when their hour comes, you stand with them, no matter the cost." The Kelrath Chancellor, a young female named Thara, named after the old High Chancellor Thekna, as was tradition, spoke next. Her voice was strong, confident. The Kelrath were dying. Our species was fading. We had accepted our end. Then humanity came. They did not come for profit or territory. They came because 150 years ago, we did the right thing. We showed kindness to strangers, and that kindness, given freely, expecting nothing, created a bond that saved our species. She looked at Sarah, then at the monument, then at the crowd of thousands of humans and Kelrath standing together. Our children will learn this story. Their children will learn it. For as long as the Kelrath exist, we will remember, and we will teach the galaxy what humanity taught us, that true strength is not in weapons or ships. True strength is in keeping your word, in standing by those who stood by you,